With its reputation for harsh conditions and maximum security, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary is one of the most famous prisons in the world, even though it closed more than 60 years ago. The Rock, as the prison came to be known, saw many escape attempts during its nearly 3 decades as a federal prison. And though the prison was often referred to as escape-proof, 5 inmates would challenge that assertion. In this episode of Tales from the Underworld, Escape from Alcatraz. Even before it became the site of America's most notorious prison, Alcatraz Island, located in the San Francisco Bay, was known as a foreboding place. Seized by the United States during the Mexican-American War, the island became the site of a fort due to its strategic location. During the American Civil War, the fort was used to imprison alleged Confederate sympathizers. By the mid-1890s, the fort was used to hold numerous Native Americans who had refused to comply with forced government mandates. As the number of detainees continued to grow, the site became an official military prison in 1907. Between 1910 and 1912, the prison was greatly expanded, and a new 600-cell complex, along with a hospital and mess hall, were built. Then, in 1933, the site was taken over by the United States Department of Justice. The following year, in 1934, Alcatraz officially became a federal prison. This timing was likely not coincidental. By the early 1930s, America was experiencing an unprecedented crime wave. The remnants of former bootlegging gangs had now become a highly organized crime syndicate, with its reach in nearly every American city. In addition, the economic hardships created by the Great Depression had created desperate outlaws like John Dillinger, Babyface Nelson, Pretty Boy Floyd, Machine Gun Kelly, and many more. Many infamous criminals have served time at Alcatraz, including Al Capone, Bumpy Johnson, Alvin Karpis, and a young Whitey Bulger. Alcatraz was intended to house the most violent or troublesome inmates from other federal prisons, as well as those who were prone to escape. The prison's location, surrounded by the frigid waters and strong currents, made the likelihood of escape nearly impossible. Yet despite this, there have been many recorded escape attempts during Alcatraz's nearly 3 decades as a federal prison. Prison officials like to boast that no one had ever successfully escaped from Alcatraz. However, that is not entirely true. In the prison's history, there have been 5 men to successfully escape from the prison and enter the water. In the years and decades that followed, there were numerous reported sightings and encounters of the men, which the FBI followed up on. According to the Bureau, none of these tips turned out to be credible. The first escape occurred in 1937, when 2 Oklahoma bank robbers named Ralph Rowe and Theodore Cole slipped through a 9 by 18-inch hole that they had previously cut and concealed. Sometime between 1 and 1:30 p.m. on the afternoon of December 16, 1937, Rowe and Cole made their move. A thick fog had rolled in, creating near-zero visibility, and using the fog as cover, the 2 inmates then made their way to a fence, where they smashed the lock using a wrench they had stolen from the prison shop. After that, their trail went cold. It is assumed that Rowe and Cole entered the water on makeshift rafts, fashioned from used tires and other materials. The island and surrounding area were thoroughly searched in the days following the escape, but no trace of the men were found. Prison officials were quick to pronounce that the men had drowned and likely been swept out to sea. As the warden stated at the time, "The water is too cold, the tide running too high, and the land too far." And though he was likely right about that, neither man was ever officially confirmed deceased. 25 years after Cole and Rowe paddled away to an unknown fate, another shocking escape from Alcatraz would capture the imagination of the public. The mastermind behind the June 1962 escape was 36-year-old convicted bank robber Frank Morris. Though he was extremely intelligent, with a high IQ, circumstances had helped lead him into a life of crime. Having already attempted to escape from the Louisiana State Penitentiary, he was shipped to Alcatraz in January 1960. Morris's accomplices in the escape were brothers John and Clarence Anglin. John and Clarence, along with a third brother, were all convicted of robbing a bank in Alabama. After John and Clarence attempted to escape from the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, they were both sent to Alcatraz, John in late 1960 and Clarence in January 1961. A fourth man named Alan West was also involved in the plot. However, he was unable to leave his cell in time and was left behind. He would later cooperate in the investigation and was not charged for his role. Their plan had started to come together in December 1961 after all four men were placed in adjacent cells. Over the next several months, using old saw blades they had found, along with a makeshift drill created from a vacuum cleaner motor, the men went to work widening the ventilation ducts behind their sinks. Late on the night of June 11th or early on the morning of June 12th, 1962, the convicts put their plan in motion. Using realistic-looking papier-mâché heads to fool the guards during count, Morris and the Anglin brothers climbed through the holes they had dug and, using a network of pipes, made their way to the ceiling and pried open the ventilator shaft. The men then made their way to the beach, where it is believed they launched into the water using a rubber raft constructed out of stolen raincoats and other materials. Magazines were later discovered in their cell describing how to make a homemade raft that was seaworthy. Once again, prison officials were quick to pronounce all three men drowned. 2 weeks later, a Coast Guard ship recovered a floating paddle that was believed to have been used by the escapees. That same day, another boat recovered a wallet and some personal papers and letters sealed in rubber belonging to the Anglins. About a week later, pieces of raincoat materials were discovered washed up near the Golden Gate Bridge. Investigators believe that this was part of the raft. Although prison officials were adamant that all three men had died in the water, the FBI continued to investigate the case until the end of 1979, when it was officially turned over to the responsibility of the U.S. Marshal Service. In the years and decades following the escape, there have been numerous reported sightings and encounters from former friends, family members, and strangers. According to the FBI, none of these tips turned out to be credible. If they were still alive today, all three men would be close to 100 years old. Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary was officially discontinued as a federal prison in 1963, citing maintenance costs and infrastructure problems. Today, the site of the former prison is a national park and museum that draws millions of tourists annually.
Thanks for listening to Tales from the Underworld. If you're fascinated by the stories we uncover, make sure to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. For even more exclusive content, head over to our website at talesfromtheunderworld.com and subscribe to our newsletter. You'll get insider access to deeper case details, early updates on new episodes, and more true crime content sent straight to your inbox. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and stay out of the shadows.